Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh on the Mully and Haugh show on 670 The Score. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune back from a day at Halas Hall, another day of training camp. 9 practices in, I think, now for Caleb Williams. Dan, a hot one today. We did learn officially what everyone suspected. Matt Eberflus wasted no time during his post-practice address to the Bears beat that starters, including Caleb Williams, will not play Thursday against the Texans in the Hall of Fame game in Canton, Ohio. No big surprise there.
So the way I was leaning, it seemed to be the way it was trending. The Bears will practice on Wednesday at Halas Hall before departing for Canton, Ohio, and they're going to have what Matt referred to as a split practice. So it will be all the players not playing in the Hall of Fame game going through a padded practice on one field, and all the players who will see action in the Hall of Fame game doing much lighter work on the other field. And so a unique approach to the week. I don't think that there's anything major to the decision other than the fact that it just delays the public's eyes on seeing where Caleb Williams is at in his development. I know Caleb has said that he wants to get reps. He wants to feel the game speed in live action. Matt Eberflus has been forward since the spring and saying that they're targeting between 45 and 55 snaps for Caleb in the preseason. And so now you have 3 more games to try to distribute those. Matt did stop short of saying that Caleb would start in Buffalo. I think that was a little bit of a cautious approach to saying, well, let's see how our health is a week from now. But for now, we're going to go to Canton, Ohio, you and I respectively, and not have a chance to see number 18 in game action for the first time.
Yeah, national televised audience won't be able to either. That's, I think, not a big shocker, and this will be a detail down the road. I think Hard Knocks may be, well, I don't know what they're looking for. We'll find out next week. But I think that we heard from Caleb Williams after, for the first time after padded practice on Monday, really handled himself well. We'll get to some of that sound in a moment. But I think this is all part of the development of a rookie quarterback that goes back to the beginning when they plotted this out, the exhaustive process that this became, all of which you chronicled so well in Sunday's Chicago Tribune. Dan, I thought it was a terrific story. There was one thing, more than one, but the one thing that really stood out to me that I learned, but I just wondered how you would describe to people who might not have clicked on it yet on ChicagoTribune.com, which they should. But what do you think the biggest takeaways were for you and then for most readers?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, this stems back to the pre-draft process, and I think it was very interesting for the Bears to be in a position where they were picking number 1 overall, because as they were learning about Caleb Williams and they were trying to make the decision on whether he was going to be the quarterback that they would push their chips all in on, the general manager, Ryan Poles, was simultaneously crafting a customized development plan. If this is our guy, then this is how we're going to try to bring out the best in him early, how we're trying to bring out the best in him often. And so it gave me sort of an entry point into picking Ryan's brain in terms of what were the things that were important to him, what were the things that were important to Matt Eberflus, how did they go about creating support around Caleb Williams to make sure that it wasn't just here's this prospect with a ton of wonderful next level transcendent gifts and we're just going to cross our fingers and hope and pray that this all works out okay. It was, okay, what can we do in every single department of this building to make sure that he is prepared and equipped to be successful for this franchise? And so my piece, as you mentioned, that's up at ChicagoTribune.com, was just kind of a piece-by-piece look at a lot of things that they put into place for Caleb Williams. And now we'll all kind of sit back, observe, scrutinize, and see how it all kind of plays out.
I think that overall it was pretty good chronology, also good behind-the-scenes reporting, things that people might not have known about, things they had heard before, places he has gone, whether it's the West Hollywood Club and how at ease he was in those environments, or his grooming as a college quarterback. Just a lot of good detail. My favorite anecdote, though, something I might have heard a version of before, but I think the way you described it stood out, was that when he was a quarterback at Oklahoma, and it was a short yardage running play, and the running back was stalled on 4th down and short, and he ripped the ball out of the running back's grip, and he took it himself for a gain of 5 to keep the chains moving. And that was the play that, forgive me, I don't remember the scout, but pointed to and
Francis
said,
St. Paul. Yeah.
Okay, Francis St. Paul. When you're evaluating certain things about a quarterback, I think that you look for certain, moments that are defining. To me, that was a big one. And I think the scouts use that, Francis St. Paul used that as an example of just how competitive this easygoing guy with all the confidence and polish can be when he's between the lines. And I thought that to me spoke volumes about the kind of competitor Caleb Williams is.
Yeah, and Ian Cunningham brought that up because for him it was one of those moments that as they were going through the pre-draft process, it really resonated within the room. And it was Francis St. Paul's video presentation of the play that you referenced, which is late in the game against Kansas. Caleb Williams is a true freshman at Oklahoma. They are trying to fight off a feisty underdog opponent. They've got I think it was a 5-point lead at the time, and they're facing a fourth down. And when the running play gets stuffed, Caleb had the wherewithal, the situational awareness, the competitive hunger to go get the football out of his running back's hands and make something happen. And it's just that it's that it factor that you're looking for. In crunch time, you want a quarterback who can go ahead and win you the football game. They ended that drive with a win-sealing touchdown in the final minute, and it was one of many moments on the film of Caleb Williams in college that told the Bears, okay, there are some special gifts here to work with. And one of those special gifts is competitive hunger. It's the understanding of the moment and the mindset to meet every moment with the responsibility that you are the guy that is going to be credited for the win and blamed for the loss. And Caleb's had that at every step of the way. Certainly one of those sort of entry points into the story of how Caleb Williams and the Bears came to be a marriage. Now, whether it's a match made in heaven, we'll reevaluate that on our preseason podcast in 2028, and we'll see what Caleb's contract looks like and who he's playing for. And then we'll figure out where this whole thing is headed.
What do you think you learned the most that you didn't know about Caleb Williams? I know it's hard to ask that question because it seems like we know so much about him and have for the past year, but anything stand out?
Well, there's two things that I would bring up here. Number one, I would say that his thirst for constructive criticism, which is something that we heard from Lincoln Riley when we played his draft weekend audio here a few months ago, is constant. And so the Bears have recognized that. They know that they have to feed that when you have an eager learner like Caleb Williams, you have to engage him at all times. And so they have Kerry Joseph, the quarterback's coach, Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, trying to make sure that on a daily basis, they're giving him feedback, positive, negative, everything in between, just so that he has that sort of satiation to finish his day and know what he's doing well and what he needs to work on and why did this play go wrong and why are we doing this with this certain concept. And so that constant quest for knowledge and the ability to absorb a lot of information is something the Bears are diving into. Matt Eberflus has said they're going to push the envelope with all that they pour into Caleb and by extension the offense here in the early going and see how he responds because they think he can handle that. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say, and I get this question a lot at this time of year, David, is why is this going to be different? You and I lived through Justin Fields. We lived through Mitch Trubisky. And my immediate answer to that is, number one, you're talking about a quarterback with more gifts for the position. Like, I think that's become obvious right out of the gates. The training camp success hasn't been there on a daily basis, but the flashes have been where you say, okay, there's a feel for the position that's there. And number two, you look at the support, as we're talking about this through the lens of Ryan Poles, that the Bears have put around him. Mitch Trubisky arrived with Ryan Pace looking eager to fire the head coach that was going to oversee him. Not a real good rookie season when you're in that dynamic and you don't have the union between coaching staff, quarterback, and front office. That exists now. Now you've got to make it work. You look at the supporting cast that Caleb Williams walks into. We're not just talking about all the guys on offense, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, Cole Kmet, Rome Odunze, all down the list, Darnell Wright. We're talking about a defense that should be able to help him win games early without having to do too much. And so that didn't exist for Mitch. It didn't exist for Justin Fields. And it gives Caleb a chance to kind of, okay, I don't have to do everything in this particular week for us to get a victory. And then beyond that, you look at all the support structure stuff around the building that Ryan has put in, and you say, well, this looks like it's more thorough than we've experienced in the last two quarterback reboots.
A couple things have stood out to me just watching as an observer up at practice today. But I think overall, you say this a lot about guys and athletes sometimes that they know what they don't know. And I guess when they're naive, you say they don't know what they don't know. I think Caleb Williams is as an example, like he knows what he doesn't know, and he tries to fill in the gaps by learning, by asking, by not being too cool to think that he is beyond the coaching. And I think he's very coachable because of that. And I guess I have been most surprised by just, when you see him up close and personal and throw the easy release and the arm talent is what everybody says it is. And you've seen it on TV, you see it in person, and it's just something to behold. But I think the easy confidence that he operates with, the humility that he has brought into town surprised me. And maybe I shouldn't have been, but I think it has when you see it consistently. And Kevin Byard was a guest on the Mully and Haugh show on Tuesday morning, and I asked him a similar question about Caleb Williams, about what about his presence has stood out to a guy who has been in the league a long time, been with some good quarterbacks, been on some good teams, and certainly is respected as a leader in that locker room. And he told a great anecdote about Monday after practice. Caleb Williams, when they break down, usually it's a veteran and they get around and they say something. And Caleb Williams says, no, I want to do this. And he gathered them up. And I know some people will scoff at this, and some people have already mocked it on Twitter, and that's okay. But Kevin Byard said, Caleb Williams said that, okay, guys, we need to clean things up. We need to clean things up literally. We need to pick up those bottles. We need to pick up the towels. We need to make it easier on the custodians. We need to do the details right. And yeah, it reminds you of, I mean, did Mitch have a similar anecdote and
Correct.
something?
Yep.
But I think that Mitch didn't come to town with the aura or with the kind of having to fight back at this, push back at this idea, or with a reputation for being a little bit of a diva, which was totally unfair in the case of Caleb Williams. So when you hear Kevin Byard give this kind of praise to a young man who has been everything and then some in terms of a leader on this team already, it resonates.
Well, I'll be clear. Like, guys liked Mitch Trubisky and guys liked Mitch Trubisky immediately, but I didn't recall the level of admiration expressed, particularly from veterans like Kevin Byard and other guys that have been in this league for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, about a quarterback who has come in and connected, as we talked about recently, on both sides of the ball. He has made an effort to create those relationships and create those connections in ways that he thinks will be meaningful up the road. And it's there. You mentioned sort of the reputation that unfairly followed Caleb Williams into the draft. Just 5 months ago, the Bears were part of the group that was saying, I don't know, there's some things we got to look into here with this kid. We got to figure out what's real and what's not. And Ryan Poles talked to me about being in the early stages of the pre-draft process and seeing a kid who had made millions of dollars through the NIL process in college, who had won a Heisman Trophy, who had lived in a penthouse in LA, who had done endorsement deals. And I'm going to read you the quote because I thought that this was a really telling quote from Ryan. He said, I was afraid the system had made him into someone who wasn't reachable or coachable and wouldn't take ownership. But what I actually found was a pretty down-to-earth guy who absolutely believes in himself, has a ton of confidence in who he is, and yet is relatable and can bring others along with him. That's some special sauce there that the Bears are trying to tap into. And you mentioned just a couple minutes ago the coachability. He doesn't, not only has coachability, it's like a desire to be coached. And so you have to do your best to use that strength to your advantage and really roll forward in a way that helps the young quarterback get going. Because again, we can document it every step of the way. This is a steep climb and Caleb's at the bottom of the mountain right now. So just be ready for some of the rock slides that come for him, but he certainly has the right approach. And he certainly has the support of the people around him to help him up the climb.
And most importantly, he knows that he's not going to be able to do it himself, and he's not overestimating his ability so far. And that's not only a big picture development that is good, but it's also, when you take that on the field, you want him to apply that same sort of logic to 3rd and 7 or 2nd and long, where he doesn't feel like he's overestimating his own ability. He knows it's going to be you just don't do more than is necessary. Stay within yourself. And he's done a good job of that so far. I thought then on Monday when he did answer questions, Dan, what we're talking about was reflected in the way that he responded to, I think it was Herb Howard's question. And Herb asked some really good questions, but it's Herb Howard's questions about what area of his game is he furthest from being ready.
What games do you feel like is furthest away from where you would like to be come week 1?
Furthest away. It's a good question. I would say right now, working on my got me with that one. Stumped me. I would say working on my blitz looks, my blitz and coverage looks, and feeling the umbrella of the defense, and filling that out to adjust. To adjust protection, to adjust, whether it's a run, flip the run, flip the, run into it, flip the protection, get to a quick game, get to a cover zero check, however the structure of it works out, just progressing. And a lot of that comes with seeing it, and reps. And so that's why also, preseason and, those things are so important.
Good stuff. Really thoughtful stuff. Really, the big pause I think was important to leave in there just because it did speak to just how he contemplates his answers before he makes them. I don't know if that's going to last long, but right now, I don't know if it's intentional or not. But he is genuine and sincere when he is answering questions during his time on behind the podium.
There's no question, and that's part of who he is trying to create thought, and being thoughtful with his answers, being thoughtful with his approach. I wrote down at the end of Monday's practice that he looks every bit like a rookie who's 8 practices into training camp. There's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of frustration. None of it is alarming. It's all just the natural process of a young quarterback learning the complexity of the position at this level, getting humbled, reacting to that, and then finding ways to grow through it. And so, look, you look down at your calendar and you say, okay, we haven't hit August 1st yet. We still have the entire month of August to kind of speed this thing up and then get on that runway to the regular season, or that on-ramp to the regular season when September arrives. So there is time here, and you want to see 2-3 weeks from now that there is what Shane Waldron called the daily growth. But what you're seeing is a quarterback that is not allowing the frustration to knock him off course, and the understanding that this is a process and it is really difficult. It's a really hard thing to do, and embracing that is going to be part of his formula for trying to get through the process.
Anything else about Caleb and your story on ChicagoTribune.com before we move on to the other quarterback that was very entertaining this week?
Well, and they go hand in hand here, this answer. It's just that the idea that the Bears are very aware of who they have in their presence. This is a headliner. This is a guy whose every word is going to be scrutinized, whose every appearance is going to be snapshot, a guy who's going to have to take on the role, as Ryan Poles said, as a figurehead in the organization. It's team president, it's general manager, it's head coach, and it's quarterback. And so the want internally inside the organization to train him like a CEO, to make sure that he understands the duties of those podium sessions, is something that they've put time and thought and resources into, and put people around Caleb that they think can help him, whether it's Ted Cruz, who came in from the Chiefs to be a resource, whether it's Aaron Clark, who was recently promoted within the communications department this offseason. There's a push here, David, and probably an important one at that, to make sure that the forward-facing public speaking Caleb Williams becomes a meaningful voice for the organization, and one that understands the position he's in.
Well put. I think that's really well put. And now I would like to officially reopen the Bagency 2024. Tyson Bagent is the quarterback you're going to see a lot of in the preseason starting Thursday night. He will make the start against the Texans. He is the Bears' number 2 quarterback. I don't know how much challenge he will receive from Brett Rippon. Let's wait and see. But I do think that Tyson Bagent, a year later, after we learned about the legend of Shepherdsville, West Virginia, it kind of continues, because he is an entertaining young man, which leads us to the podium on Sunday when Tyson Bagent addressed his workout program.
Well, first it started here with a question from Mark Carman about whether Tyson went into the offseason understanding that the Bears were going to draft Caleb Williams with the sort of lean to bring in a veteran backup that might threaten his role as QB2. It launched from there. Here's the full exchange, because you're going to enjoy this one.
Are you thinking that the Bears might go out and get a real established veteran quarterback with you versus, they basically put a ton of confidence in you?
Yeah, I didn't really think too much about it. I was too busy grinding my absolute face off in the off season. But whatever they were going to do, that's completely up to them. I can't control that. But, yeah, I was just excited to come back. Whoever was going to be in the QB room was going to be in the QB room. Nothing was going to change on my end, though. But yeah, like you said, it feels good to know that they have some, that they have confidence in me, and that they like what I was able to do last year, and hopefully they're being able to see the strides that I've made in the offseason and going into year 2.
What was the hardest grinding your face off thing that you did?
June 19th, shout out to one of my best friends, Derek Gallagher, 1 mile burpee broad jump. Hour and 7 minutes. Let's go.
Is that for a mile?
Burpee broad jump. Burpee broad jump. 1 mile.
How many calories do you burn on?
I don't know. I ate a lot after that. It was nice.
What would you eat afterwards? Where'd you go after that?
I went to Betty's. Shout out to Shepherdstown, West Virginia. Went to Betty's restaurant. It was in got the what did I get? I think I just got 6 eggs and bacon with some toast. It was good.
Who asked him where he ate?
I did.
I thought that. Okay, that was your voice.
So if you're ever in Shepherdsville, West Virginia, Betty's is the place to go for your workout replenishing.
And I've
meal.
never been to Shepherdsville, West Virginia, but my guess is it might not have more than one place to eat breakfast.
It might be it. It might be Betty's and Betty's only. But like, man, how entertaining was that snip? And I went on to ask Tyson, was this a workout that you did on like the high school track, or were you right down the street? Him and Derek Gallagher, shout out to Derek Gallagher, just went down the street. They went a half mile from Derek Gallagher's house, touched the river, whatever river is right there, came back, did a half mile back. And if you heard those banging sounds in the clip that we just played, that was Tyson banging on the side of the podium there, pretty pumped up with the hour 7 time he posted in that burpee broad jump. He went on to say, look, like that's not a workout that is necessarily making me better at football, but it is creating mental toughness and mental fortitude in me in a way that when I get into the dog days at training camp and guys are complaining, I can just think of burpee broad jump 1 mile, and go through that process. And so David, at the end of that press conference, he also talked about how he's been living with his family back in West Virginia and he wants to stay under the same roof as his younger siblings as long as possible because the nostalgia in him doesn't want those days to end quicker than they have to. And so you have this like absolutely alluring combination of meathead qualities, like he expressed there, with this total softy approach to being a family guy and a mama's boy and a family first dude. Like if you've got issues with Tyson Bagent or the Tyson Bagent story, it's on you at this point, because that dude is fun to be around, fun to talk to, fun to watch play, and he's going to get an opportunity this week to get back on the field.
Couldn't agree more. He's an easy guy to root for. I hope he's lights out this preseason and makes the Bears feel good about their number 2 quarterback. And I hope Caleb Williams starts all 17 games. Both things can be true, and he can be a very viable backup to provide a sense of security for the Bears this season. And I do find him very entertaining. And since I beat his dad on television in arm wrestling, I have really liked the family, kind of warmed up to the whole crew. So I am a proud member still.
Yeah, no, you're on the board, I believe, at this point.
Yeah.
And I joked at Monday's practice, you may have already been out of the bleachers at this point, but he had a 7-on-7 rep where he threw a deep ball to Colin Johnson and overshot him by 3 yards. I said he was working out. He was grinding his absolute face off too hard in the offseason. Now his arm is too strong. There was worries last year that he couldn't throw it far enough. Now he's overshooting guys by 4 or 5 yards because he just got too strong.
Somebody tell Collinsworth, his arm's too strong. That'd be great. Collinsworth loves Tyson Bagent. You think I love Tyson Bagent? Nobody loves Tyson Bagent more than Chris Collinsworth.
Yeah. And so look, like the other part about the Tyson Bagent story is he's going to start this year. Like history tells us that the Bears backup always starts at least once, right? Like there's just something creeps up. And so there's going to be a week where the spotlight shifts and it's Tyson Bagent back in the center of it. And I think the Bears votes of confidence in him building wide, it starts with Ryan Poles, to be their QB2 is really telling because, again, especially when you're drafting a prospect like Caleb Williams, to feel comfortable with a second-year guy who was out of Division II is pretty telling about how they feel about him.
All right, let's zip through a couple things bullet point wise before we close with Matt Eberflus's ode to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Nate Davis at right guard. He won't start on Thursday night, obviously, because he is a starter. Shane Waldron said when he's healthy, he is the starter. Any reason to believe that Nate Davis is in a competition at right guard?
Yes, because he doesn't put together practices in a long enough string that lead you to believe he's going to be available all the time. And Matt was pretty blunt on Saturday afternoon when Nate Davis pulled out of a padded practice, and he's still been out and he's been day to day and missed the last 2 practices, that they are seeking dependability on the offensive line. They are seeking, in Matt's words, guys who can push through hard better, and when you're not able to make it through the grind of training camp, everyone in the building has to start looking around and going, well, wait a second, is this guy going to be available for us when we get into November, December, and hopefully January with meaningful games to play? So I can't be more straightforward with my own thoughts on this. It's like, if you can't practice for 3 consecutive weeks without having to raise your hand and say, I don't have it today. I'm not feeling well enough. I've got an injury. Like, I don't know how you can be part of the Poles Eberflus formula for building a championship team, because they're all about football character and grinders and dudes who want to go the extra mile to be there for the man next to them. And so I've got major question marks about Nate Davis's place in the 2024 Bears.
Small sample size, but Velus Jones, and seeing some cat passes and watching him catch the ball still to me seems like a body catcher. It's a little distinction to make, but guys sometimes are naturally. I remember Earl Bennett. I always think of Earl Bennett. He was the most natural hands catcher. His hands were great. Obviously, he came from Vanderbilt. He was with the Bears, had a pretty good run. But there are other examples, but he always pops into my head for some reason. Is Velus Jones going to make this team as a wide receiver, as a punt returner, kickoff returner, or is he not going to make this team?
His avenue to having an impact in 2024 is as a kickoff returner. New kickoff rules have been music to Velus Jones's ears. You know, the new rules where the coverage team will line up at the 40 and they won't be able to move until, you know, the ball is caught or touches the ground. Velus Jones has said that it changes the entire dynamic of a returner, where you don't have to read as much. You find your open lane and you hit it and you go. And he thinks he can have a major impact in that regard. The preseason is going to be fascinating in this world, David, because nobody in the NFL knows what the proper strategy and what the proper approach to these plays are. So there's going to be a lot, unlike offense and defense in the preseason, there's going to be a lot of real life experimentation on the fly going on in the month of August with the kickoffs. Velus Jones is going to be part of that for the Bears. If he's able to be an explosive guy in the kick return game, they're going to find a reason to keep him on the roster.
Who's the sixth best? Who's the sixth defensive back on this team? Is it Terrell Smith?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah,
Easily?
sixth defensive back. Yeah, Terrell Smith. But you're seeing some good reps. Kyler Gordon's been out now for several days, and Reddy Stewart has been one of these guys that's
where I was
jumped in.
leading you. I was trying to lead you that way because he's got good feet.
And he's made some plays on the ball, and he's had some interceptions, and he does look like a guy that meets the moment, you know. And so that's a preseason name to keep your eyes on, and we'll see which direction it goes. Again, with these 4 preseason games, we're going to get a lot of looks at a lot of guys where you're going to say 3 weeks from now, oh, hey, you know, I think I maybe predicted coming out of the draft that Ian Wheeler was going to have a preseason. I think I said a kick return touchdown, and Studs may have the audio somewhere of that. Well, he's been banged up a little bit, but that's a name to keep an eye on the radar. And there's going to be a handful of guys in the next, 17 days that we say, wow, that guy looks like he's got a chance to stick around.
DeAndre Swift, the starter at running back, won't play Thursday night. I wonder who else won't. Roschon Johnson probably could use the experience and look. Khalil Herbert, not sure where he stands, but do you think either of those two guys fighting for a spot or defining a role will play against the Texans?
We'll see. Somebody's got to run the football. And like I said, Ian Wheeler's a little bit hurt. Travis Homer's been banged up this week. And so, like, you're going to have to hand the ball to somebody on Thursday night and figure out who that's going to be. That backfield depth chart is fascinating to me, because if you do have every intent to keep a fullback with Kerry Blasingame still on the roster, that's something that you've got to consider. And again, these new kickoff rules change a little bit of what you're looking for on special teams, you know. And so Richard Hightower is going to be a big part of these conversations when we get deeper into August about the roster, who fits where, how many running backs can you keep versus other positions that you may want to stack up on for depth. Roschon Johnson is in really good standing. Khalil Herbert is one of those guys that the month of August may be key for in terms of securing his place on this roster.
Anything else about practice, either on Tuesday or up to this point, that we haven't addressed that stands out to you?
Yeah, well, the Tuesday practice was ugly if you're a fan of offense. I think in the 11-on-11 session, the first team offense led by Caleb Williams only had 1 completion in 4 different 11-on-11 drives or series is there. In the 1-on-1 session, which is usually target practice for an offense because you basically have the entire field for one receiver to beat a defensive back, the defensive backs were making plays left and right and knocking balls down and disrupting routes and playing with a level of tenacity and crispness where you're like, whoa, is this just the offense struggling to catch up to speed, or is this secondary just that good right now? Worth keeping an eye on when they start to play some other people. Don't forget the Bengals will be in town for a crossover practice in a couple weeks, and that should be a really good test when you've got Burrow and Chase and Higgins and some of those other guys running around on your field. If you can be that productive in some of those one-on-ones, then we'll say, okay, this Bears secondary definitely looks the part of being one of the best in the league.
It is Hall of Fame week. It's a huge honor and week and stage for Devin Hester, for Steve McMichael, what the best, most heartfelt story of the week in terms of the induction class and these enshrinees. Also, Julius Peppers, former Bear, going in. We're talking to Rod Marinelli, by the way, on 6-7 Scores
Very
Morning
nice.
Show on Friday morning. Dan, though, we'll let you set up what Matt Eberflus wanted his team to know about not really taking advantage and blinking when they are in Canton, because they are going to be in the midst of greatness, and he wanted them to reflect and remember that.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because these teams always go to play in the Hall of Fame game, and they've got to turn around quickly after the game, fly back, and resume practices before they even do the Hall of Fame ceremony. And so I just asked Matt on Tuesday kind of what his plan was for the team to kind of soak in a little bit of the Hall of Fame experience. You get this opportunity. What was the approach, and kind of how are you going to absorb it all? And here was some of that back and forth with Matt Eberflus on Tuesday.
We get there, we're going to have a bus that goes down to the Hall of Fame, and we're going to meet with, Devin's going to be down there. I know that Jimbo's going to be there, Dent's going to be there, a couple other guys are hopefully going to be there, and we're going to meet with those guys before and hang out with those guys for a while, and then we're going to tour the hall of that evening and get back to the hotel after that. So yeah, it's going to be exciting. Our guys are excited about it, and it's going to be fun.
What do you hope your guys take away from those experiences?
Yeah, just like meeting with all, I have a lot of good friends that played on, both teams, that were really good here, and it's exciting to talk to those guys because you understand the work ethic, the passion, the togetherness, how they came together as a team, and that's always exciting. And I ask a lot of questions to those guys, and I glean a lot of information, a lot of wisdom from those championship teams, but yeah, that's what I hope that our players will take away that too.
Very well put. I'm glad Flusy doesn't miss an opportunity to kind of take a step back and reflect. This is a good move because they're not playing the starters. They need to get the most out, and people need to know if you work for the Chicago Bears organization, a charter franchise, you should know that there's nobody represented more than the Bears are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So I think that's a good idea.
And some real fan favorites going in, as you mentioned, with Hester and McMichael. We got a lot of coverage coming up at ChicagoTribune.com. My colleague Colleen Kane also doing a story about how Matt Eberflus has been touched by ALS, lost his father to the disease. And so that's a really poignant story that's coming out later this week. I've got a couple things on Steve McMichael and then a bigger one coming out later on Devin Hester. And I just want to say this about Devin, and we can talk about this later in the week. When you talk to people that were around Devin Hester, either competitors or coaches or fellow teammates, the way that they get energized simply by talking about Devin Hester is something that it always strikes me, because it's just like, you want to say that Devin Hester was a vibe. Devin Hester was a vibe, and it comes across with every single person you talk to that crossed his path during his Hall of Fame career. And so I'm really looking forward to having a chance to visit again with Devin down there and to watch him sort of get this crowning moment, because what a fun dude and what a fun player he was, and it'd be really cool to see him get his just due.
And we'll both be there in Canton, leaving on Wednesday. Take the North is taking off to Ohio. We'll have a pod later in the week from Canton, Ohio, and it will be full of maybe reminiscing about all three of the guys who have Bears connections and any other impressions maybe from the game. Won't be much there, but there might be something to talk about. Anyway, we will be there, and we'll bring it to you on the Take the North podcast and the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts, and on 670 Scores YouTube page. What else, Dan, before we go?
I think that's it. Let's get those bags packed and get over toward O'Hare here in the next day or so and roll out. I know you got to be up really early on Thursday to get that Mully and Haugh show started from Canton. And so let's go. Let's travel safe.
Don't remind me. Yes, we do. We will be up bright and early. Thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast. We'll talk to you next time from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. For Adam Studzinski, our producer, Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune, I'm David Haugh from the Mully and Haugh Show. We'll talk to you next time.
Great talk. See you out there.